Once again, A's fans, I beg you, do not look at the final score. These are spring training games, and some good things happen.
You are Locked On A's, your daily podcast on the Athletics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, A's fans, and welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are the number one sports podcasting network out there. I am your guest host. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I am normally the host of Locked On MLB, but I'm keeping the seat warm as we've got a brand new full-time host of Locked On A's who's going to be coming up before the beginning of the new season, but I'm making sure we got some new shows coming in all the time as we bid farewell to Booney after his terrific time hosting for the last year or so. Hey, follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter or whatever they call it these days. And if you want to follow me, I am at Instagram at Sully Baseball Podcast. Now, again, if you look at the win-loss record, you're going to see it's yet another loss for the A's in spring training against the San Francisco Giants. The A's, the Giants scored 6 unanswered runs. They wound up winning the game 6-2. And if you want to get into, oh my God, I hate the Giants. I don't want the Giants to win. Oh, it's spring training. It's spring training, and what you have to do is, obviously, none of the final scores have been close. They haven't won yet, and that doesn't matter. Severino pitched really well the other day as he's tuning up for the World Baseball Classic. JT Ginn today pitched really well. How do I know that? Well, he pitched 2 solid innings, which at this point is what you would pretty much expect from a spring training game. And what did he do? He pitched 2 innings. He didn't let up a hit. He didn't let up a run. He didn't let up a walk, and he struck out 3 batters. And he had his sinker ball was going. He struck out Rise, who supposedly gets a hit on everything. He struck out Devers. He struck out Ibañez. So it's not like he was striking out chumps. And when you're looking to see if he pitches well, JT pitches well, Severino pitches well, then you may start to see the little Rubik's Cube spinning around of having a decent starting rotation. And lest we forget, that's the goal. The goal is to make sure that the A's pitching staff is good. Because I think we're all pretty confident, or at least we should be pretty confident, that the bats aren't going to be bad. Now, we can't expect necessarily Wilson or Kurtz to be as good as they were their rookie year, but we shouldn't expect them to have a tremendous fall off either. By the way, I have to say, I like the idea of Kurtz leading off. I really do. Rickey Henderson spoiled a lot of our ideas of what a leadoff hitter should be. And we get enamored with things like stolen bases. I love it when you have someone who gets on base and gets a lot of hits and scores a bunch of runs are at the top of the order, even if they're not a speedster. And Kurtz leading off is smart. It really is. You want him to get the most at-bats. Now, he still doesn't have a hit this spring training, but you know what? That's not the point. He walked twice and he scored in that first inning. And we saw, Wynn's got a hit. The race for third base is looking interesting because you got Muncy. He got another hit, and his OPS is now over 900. And then you also saw Ibañez, who is a utility infielder. He played second base today, but he's capable of playing third base. And he got a double. He walked. He drove in a run in that first inning. And so you're seeing some of the people who are in the run for the third base spot. White got a hit, but he's batting 800 this spring training. Again, it's spring training. It's only 3 games. But, hey, you hand the bat to these players and you start to see if someone can do the job right. Third base is the one position which is completely wide open now. They may ask Carney Lansford to take some reps there. But Muncy, by the way, how weird is it that there are two Max Muncy's playing at the same time? I still find that weird, and hopefully you do too. But you got to see another day where you got solid pitching. Uh, Jump was not great. He let up 3 base runners in 1 inning. Ferguson let up 2 base runners and allowed a run. Alvarado let up a unearned run. Net didn't particularly pitch well. He let up 2 hits and let up a run in his inning. So yeah, the parade of relievers that came through didn't exactly do the job. But the job is to get your reps in. And right now, okay, the first game, the game against the White Sox, the starting pitcher was terrible. But we've had 2 straight games where I liked what I saw from the starting pitching. And again, it's early, obviously. It's still February. It's going to be February today. It's going to be February tomorrow. It's going to be February all the way through Saturday, the end of Saturday. So what I'm saying is, A's fans, it's a broken record, but I see people do it all the time. And they get too excited and they jump to too many conclusions based upon a spring training game. I'm feeling good about what I'm seeing. I'm feeling good that the starting pitching is showing us something. And while the bats have not been doing great, do you know what? They will heat up. I don't really sit back and think that you're going to have the likes of their current lineup is going to be, it's not going to be a dead lineup. You got a bunch of hitters. You got a bunch of professional hitters in there. I think Jeff McNeil is going to be a nice fit. Obviously, Soderstrom has a lot of power. Obviously, Langoliris has a lot of power. Obviously, Nick Kurtz has a lot of power. Obviously, Brent Rooker has a lot of power. Obviously, Lawrence Butler has power and speed. So, keep the runs down to below, to about 3 or 4 a game, and you could get that 83 wins, which I think is doable. Well, when we come back, again, there's not much to report. Spring training game, we're going to see how they do. We're going to make sure that everyone's still getting their reps in. We're going to still make sure that we can see if they could stretch out their pitching as the games go along. Tomorrow is, you're probably watching this on Tuesday morning. I'm recording this late Monday night. And the A's are going to be playing the Brewers. And Barnett is going to be making his spring training debut. Mason Barnett is not expected to, we're not expecting much from him. He did have a cameo with the team last year. But here's one thing. If you are interested in spring training results and who gets wins or not, well, neither the Brewers nor the A's have a win so far. So unless it ends at a tie, which is possible in spring training, one of these teams are going to get off the schneid. Well, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about A's history. It's something I'm really, I love A's history. I love the A's have such a strange history. And you know what? I said the other day that I felt like they should turn the page and start anew in Las Vegas. And a lot of you really, really didn't agree with me. And I respect that. And perhaps you're right. Perhaps it is in the A's best interest to continue to honor this weird vagabond history that they have because, folks, they've played once they land in Las Vegas, they'll play in more cities than any of the current major league franchises. And I want to take a look at their history because there are a lot of other places where they almost landed over the years, both when they moved from Philadelphia to Kansas City, from Kansas City to Oakland to West Sacramento eventually to Las Vegas. There were other teams that could have been there, including one proposed move that, yes, would have changed the name of the team. All right, let's hear from our friends over at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping for that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching. Listen to me, you got less stress, you got less time, more results. And when you get the right person to cut through the chaos, then you know what? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast, which is Locked On A's. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed. Hey, thanks so much for making Locked On A's your first listen. And baseball is back, and you can join the Everydayers Club, which will give you ad-free episodes and access to our group chat on Discord. For the next week or so, you can use the code SPRING for a free month. Go to lockedona's.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes and check us out at lockedona's.supercast.com. All right, now, I'm sure a lot of you who know a little bit about A's history, that they had a lot of great years in Philadelphia under Connie Mack. And the A's still have a monument, for the lack of a better word, at Citizens Bank Ballpark, which is the home of the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, I'm going to be showing a video later this week where I answer the question, why did the more successful A's leave Philadelphia while the less successful Philadelphia Phillies stuck around? That's a whole story that's basically right out of King Lear. And I did a whole video about it, and we're going to show it later on this week. But eventually, the Philadelphia A's, when Connie Mack basically was way too old to manage the team, infighting amongst his family, and they sold it to Arnold Johnson. And Arnold Johnson moved the A's from Philadelphia to Kansas City. Now, there was an unbelievably huge conflict of interest in that sale, that the commissioner of baseball should not have allowed that sale to happen. Going back, that sale was absolutely a corrupt bargain, the moving of the A's to Kansas City. It was terrible for baseball for this reason. The National League had a lot of good, solid teams, and there was a little bit of a rotation of teams that made it to the World Series in the National League. The Yankees just dominated the American League. Dominated. From 1947 to 1964, they missed the World Series 3 times. 47 to 64, 3 times. The Indians in 48 and 54, the White Sox in 59. Every other time, Yankees. And the only way that the American League seemed to make any money was by waiting for the Yankees to show up and sell out the place. So it behooved the American League that the Yankees stayed contenders. The A's were owned by Arnold Johnson, who also owned Yankee Stadium. So if the Yankees turnstiles were going, that profited the owner of the A's. That's a conflict of interest. And if you take a look at that entire era, the Yankees, whenever they had a broken down player, they would ship him to Kansas City, and the A's would ship off a young player to go to the Yankees. And everybody knew it. It was just a corrupt bargain. And 2 of the players that the Yankees shipped back to they got from Kansas City in a steal were Roger Maris and another World Series MVP in Ralph Terry, who was the World Series MVP of 1962. And the A's always got bupkis in return. When they were in Kansas City, however, Arnold Johnson basically looked at Kansas City as a way station, as a temporary home. It was the West Sacramento of its time. What Johnson wanted to do was move the A's to Los Angeles. Now, they didn't have a deal with Los Angeles yet, but he got him the hell out of Philadelphia, threw him into Kansas City, did some corrupt bargains with the Yankees, and salivated over the idea of having a team in LA. A lot of teams were salivating, especially at that time. The idea of cross country travel in the mid 50s suddenly became a nonstop travel, became a reality. So whoever got to LA first was going to make a mint, and the A's wanted it bad. And so did the Washington Senators. And the Senators were whining and dining LA. The A's were trying to get LA to sign on. And to everyone's amazement, it turned out to be the Dodgers, a much higher profile team. And they needed another team in the West Coast in order to make that move work. So the Giants, who were thinking about moving to Minnesota, wound up going to San Francisco. A few years after that happened, the worst thing that happened to Mr. Johnson, the owner of the A's, in terms of his long-term commitment to the team happened, and that is he dropped dead. And Charlie Finley took over the team. And when Charlie Finley took over the team, there are wonderful biographies and books about Charlie Finley. One of the great books about his time running the A's in Oakland was by Jason Turbo. If you've never read this book, it's called Dynastic, Bombastic, Fantastic. I don't get any kickbacks for it. It's just a wonderful, wonderful book about the lunacy of the A's of the mid-'70s. If you're an A's fan, this should be in your library. It's a great read. It's a lot of fun. But Charlie Finley, the first thing he did was he stopped the train to Yankee Stadium. He no longer was running that, and he started developing players. And by a weird coincidence, the A's developed a great team, and the Yankees fell apart. But he also wanted to move the A's anywhere. Anywhere. My God, Charlie Finley, the nanosecond he took over the Kansas City A's and proclaimed he was going to keep them in Kansas City forever, he played footsie with every freaking team, every freaking municipality imaginable. And he was trying to get the team to move to Atlanta at one point. And that seemed to be an ideal place. There was no team in the Deep South. In 1962, only 2 years after he took over the darn team, Finley wanted the team in Dallas. And he got a 4-man group of American League owners to join him and to try to get a move to Dallas. And Dallas wanted to prove they were a big-time city. At the time, there was no team in Dallas at that point, and Houston was about ready to become the first National League expansion team in a new city. The Mets were the other National League expansion team. But the Dallas move was not approved. And then Finley made the announcement. Prior to the 1964 season, he announced that the Kansas City A's were going to leave Kansas City and move to, drumroll please, Louisville, Kentucky. They were going to become the Kentucky Colonels. And some people joke that the reason he picked that name was so he can keep the KC on their hats, which he had the KC for the KCAs on their hats, and he was too cheap to buy new hats. But the owners turned it down by a 9-1 margin. And then later that same year, Charlie Finley said, I want to move the team to Oakland in 1964. And do you know what? He lost that vote 9-1. And he toyed with the idea of moving the A's to a tiny town called Peculiar, Missouri, where he was going to build a stadium in the middle of nowhere, which sounds bizarre, but it's no more bizarre than the New England Patriots playing in Foxborough. But every minute he was saying, I want to keep the A's in Kansas City, get me a new stadium in Kansas City. But then he would talk to Atlanta. And then the Braves moved from Milwaukee to Atlanta and said, all right, I'll be the Milwaukee A's. They built the Superdome in New Orleans. He said, I'll be the New Orleans A's. Then they built Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego for the Chargers. That was a multi-purpose stadium. Back then, they did smart things like build multi-purpose stadiums if they wanted to bring in another, team as either an expansion or to move. And so he said, all right, I'll be the San Diego A's. All of these were cities that he played footsie with big time, especially Seattle. And Seattle really wanted to show they were big time. And they wanted a major league franchise in the worst way. And the A's saw them as a completely viable city to move the team and become the Seattle A's in the late 60s. There was one big problem. And see if this sounds familiar, A's fans. The big problem was the stadium. It was an open air stadium in Seattle. I don't know if you've been to Seattle. It rains a bunch. Finley said, no, I think not. If he had moved to Seattle after the 1966 season, like he was trying to at one point, it would have been a disaster. They would have been rained out all the time. And we have data to show what would have happened if they had played in Sick's Stadium in Seattle, because they had the Pilots play there. The Pilots were an expansion team in 1969, the American League, the Seattle Pilots. And it was a complete catastrophe. They were rained out all the time. They went bankrupt after one season, and the next year they became the Milwaukee Brewers. Remember that. That's going to come up with the A's again. Finally, they moved to Oakland. Finally, he got the approval to move him to Oakland. And the minute he got to Oakland and put a great team on the field, he started playing footsie again with New Orleans. And it was their time in Oakland, even though they had the great success, they started to find out what we pretty much found out, that maybe the Bay Area isn't a two-team market. And by 1980, they were probably going to move to Denver. In fact, I have this book, The All-Pro Baseball Stars of 1980. I brought this up before, where they have previews for every team before the 1980 season. I was 8 years old when I got this. And see, they have every team there. So Twins, Minnesota Twins, Texas Rangers. If you go to the A's, it just says the A's, because at printing, they didn't know if they were moving to Denver or not. And it looked like they were going to. But Oakland saved it because they just lost the Raiders and they weren't going to lose the A's as well. And so they stuck around in Oakland. They played footsie with other teams, other cities, and obviously there was all the different places in California, Fremont, San Jose. I kind of thought they should have moved to San Jose. Oakland and all that, and new stadiums around Oakland. And then finally, West Sacramento. And finally, eventually, hopefully, the beautiful new Sydney Opera House looking place they're trying to build in Las Vegas. It looks like they are building it. However, as they were, those are all the places they could have moved to. But there was almost a crazy shuffle that happened that involved the White Sox, the Brewers, the A's, and three major cities. It came this close to happening. Remember I said the Pilots moved to the city of Milwaukee to become the Brewers? Well, the city of Seattle wanted to sue Major League Baseball for ripping the team away from them. And they were threatening the antitrust exemption that baseball has. And baseball realized they need to get another team into Seattle. Otherwise, the antitrust exemption would never survive a court case. So they figured out what was going to happen. The White Sox were floundering at Comiskey Park, and the ownership was not happy with it. And Danny Kaye, the famous comedic actor, wanted to buy the White Sox and move them to the city of Seattle, where they would become the Seattle White Sox. And it seemed like it looked like it was absolutely done. But the American League wasn't thrilled about leaving Chicago without an American League franchise, even though the White Sox were flopping at the time. So Charlie Finley, who was born in the South but did most of his adulting in Indiana, had his offices in Chicago. And his hair stood on end and said, hey, wait a minute. I could move the A's there. So there was nearly a scenario where you had the Seattle Pilots became the Milwaukee Braves became the Atlanta Braves. The Seattle Pilots became the Milwaukee Brewers. The Chicago White Sox were going to become the Seattle White Sox, and the Oakland A's were going to become, say it with me, the Chicago A's. And maybe the A's would have been there, and Rickey Henderson would have been one of the great heroes of Chicago baseball history. As it turned out, Bill Veeck wound up buying the White Sox and kept them in town. The city of Seattle said, "Oh, no, you didn't," and looked like they were going to sue. And guess what? The Mariners were born, and the A's stuck around. That almost happened, folks. The A's history, which is already all over the map, literally, almost was even more cluttered. So maybe you're all right. Maybe they should just keep the name. They've bounced around so much. You know what? It should be a badge of honor. Thanks so much for tuning in to Locked On A's. We're going to be checking out some of the spring training games, and I got some other explorations into what happened in Philadelphia and some of the other places they almost played in Northern California. Make sure you subscribe and follow the Locked On A's, and you can follow me at Locked On A's on Twitter or whatever it's called these days. And I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And don't miss an episode at the Everydayer Club. It's built for you. Get Locked On A's ad-free plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedona's.supercast.com to join the club. And also check me out. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Locked On MLB 5 days a week. So if you're enjoying what I'm doing here, you get 10 episodes of me a week because I'm doing Locked On A's and Locked On MLB. But we will be doing a crossover with Bryce Paterick, who's the host of Locked On Rangers. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the Rangers and the A's and seeing kind of like how we did with Brett Chansey of Locked On Astros. Are these two teams that are passing each other? A few years ago, obviously, the Rangers won the World Series. And I thought they had a great chance to do the same last year. But things fell apart. Are the Rangers a team that's on the descent? I think the A's are a team that is rising. And we will see what happens as spring training unfolds and an AL West showdown for a bunch of teams that are gunning for the Mariners that I think will involve the green and gold, whether they're in West Sacramento, Las Vegas, Philadelphia, Kansas City, Oakland, New Orleans, Seattle, all those places where they almost played. This has been Locked On A's. I am your host for the next week or so. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.